This is op.poker James here, and I'm back with part 2 of our HUDs Explained series. If you haven't watched the first part on what HUDs are and how to use them, I'd recommend watching that first. So today's video, I'm going to be looking at a slightly more complicated HUD that I made specifically for Spin Go's. Last time we used Holder Manager to look at the HUD, this time we'll use Poker Tracker 4. If you'd like to follow along with this video, you can download the HUD we are looking for free over on our Discord channel. Link in the description below. Just like last time, I'm going to go over each individual statistic and what it means. But this time, I will also look at the color coding system and explain what to look out for and the possible exploits you can make based on the new information available to you. As you can see, we are now looking at the HUD profile editor. This is the area where you can add or remove statistics or text to help you on the tables. This particular HUD is made for free-handed section of a Spin Go. Overall, this HUD has 11 main statistics along with player name and the notes tab. Just like the previous HUD, the first line only has one statistic. This is total number of hands played against the opponent. If set up correctly, this number will only look at the free-handed hands from Spin Go's and disregard the rest. This is important, as if this also included hands from heads up in the Spin Go's or from cash games or empty tees, this would skew the statistics heavily, making them unreliable. The second line, we have text indicating that all statistics found here relate to it. In this case, we are looking at both the buttons VPIP and PFR. As described before, VPIP and PFR are voluntary put in pot pre-flop and pre-flop raise percentages. In this instance, they are being used to specifically look at one position rather than holistically like in the default HUD. The first thing to look at when playing is if the VPIP and PFR are showing the same percentages or not. If they aren't, this means the player is entering the pot by limping as well as raising. When looking more closely at the specific numbers, you will notice that all statistics, apart from total hands, follow a color coding system. Red numbers indicate tightness, yellow numbers indicate within the expected spectrum, and green indicates looseness. This has been done manually in the color ranges tab and can be changed to your own parameters if you feel like that would help. The following line then looks at small blind play with the limp stat followed by the raise first in stat, which looks at pots once the button has folded, and then a total free bet stat. The last three lines are looking at how the big blind defends against both the button and the small blind and breaks it down for each scenario. If we go back to the HUD profile editor, we can look at another group of statistics. These are used to create separate boxes to position on the poker tables. This second group I labeled post-flop and has 16 separate statistics on how your opponent plays both in position, last to act, or out of position, first to act. The first line of both the in position and out of position focus on the betting frequencies, starting with how often they continuation bet the flop. This statistic looks only at the hands where the player was the aggressor pre-flop, the one who was raising. It then takes those hands and in percentage terms shows you how often they continue betting on the flop. The next statistic looks at how often a player bets in a limped pot in percentage terms. And the last two stats for both in position and out of position are how often they c-bet turn and c-bet the river. So continuation bet turn, continuation bet river. These look at how often the opponent continues betting all the way to the turn on the river. So they have to bet pre-flop, then continue betting on the flop, then continue betting on the turn, and then continue betting on the river. The second lines of in position and out of position focus on how they react to bets post-flop. The first statistic on the second line looks at how often players fold to a flop continuation bet when they are in different positions respectively. The next three stats are a more general look at how often they fold to flop, turn and river bets in percentage terms, depending on again if they're in position or out of position. The advantage of using a HUD with more specific conditions than the default HUD in the previous video is that we can get a more precise look of the play of our opponents in very specific situations. Rather than just a holistic VPIP stat, we have now essentially broken that down multiple times in this more advanced Spin Go HUD for the button, small blind, and the big blind. The disadvantage is that a much greater sample of hands are required to get any useful data out of it. It's only after about 120 hands that we can gain any useful knowledge, and even then, these will only be helpful if the numbers shown are wildly off of the norm. To fully use all of the stats in this heads-up display, we would need around 500 hands on the player to start coming to some conclusions. Given that a lot of you are playing in games with very large player pools, getting 500 hands on a player can be a very hard thing to do. If that's the case, I would recommend not using a HUD and instead work on a good note and labeling system to refer to in close spots in the future. If you can get 500 plus hands on your opponents, the HUD and specifically the color coding system will really help. Once you're used to the initial stats, you can start to add many other ones that focus on specific stack sizes or flop, turn and river play post flop. Just remember, these statistics will only be useful if you have the sample to back it up. If you're interested in learning how to crush low stakes spin and goes, come check out our new Spin and Go course. We've recently added a new module called Getting Short, which goes more in depth into how to play when the blinds go up. The course includes over 20 pre-flop hand charts on how to play from each position, helping you to have a flawless pre-flop game plan, and 16 videos covering post-flop play from each position and how to exploit the various play types you'll find on low stakes spin and goes.